Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time again. Let's talk metal. Tonight, I want to show a whole lot of metal because I'm going to be dealing with some bands that I tend to be pretty completist about. Uh, Completism in heavy metal collecting is a topic, that comes up and people talk about it from time to time. I did a video just a while back talking about why I'm not a completist. I have no problem with folks if they are completist. People collect in different ways for different reasons, and that's fine. When I was younger, I wanted to be completist about a lot of things, but over time I realized that wasn't a great way for me personally to try to collect, and so I drifted away from that. But there are a few bands that I tend to have just about everything by. And those are the ones I want to show off tonight. I'm not going to talk about the albums and stuff in detail or the bands in detail. Most folks will probably be familiar with these groups anyway. This is more just to, kind of very quickly show off how much stuff starts to pile up when you try to be completist about something. Something to note off the bat before I get into showing items. I think we have to be a little careful when we use the term completist because if you take it to its logical conclusion, I think very, very, very few people are completist about anything. A lot of people, when they say completist, might mean I have all the studio albums. Okay, that's one thing. But for most bands, there's going to be other stuff that could be part of your collection too. If you wanted to be completely completist, do you have all their EPs, singles, demos, t-shirts, posters, patches, other paraphernalia? There is more that you can collect than just the albums. There's all this other merchandise too. And for a lot of bands, you also start getting into areas like, what about videos? Do you have all the DVDs and VHS they released? What about bootleg material? Do you have a lot of the bootlegs? Are you actually a completist if you don't have all, excuse me, all of their bootleg stuff? Well, everybody has to draw the line somewhere. I'm sure there's, a few people out there here and there that really are true completists about certain bands. If you're being completist, especially about larger bands, say an Iron Maiden or a Judas Priest, you got to have a lot of money to sink into that hobby. You also are going to need a lot of space because when you start getting into all the different pressings, do you have all the Japanese pressings, the European pressings, reissues, variants, and stuff? It's going to take up a huge amount of physical space if you have all that stuff, and especially all that associated merchandise, figures, statues, t-shirts, concert posters. It would be hard to know if you ever really completed the collection because there's probably something out there. There's a flyer from an Australian tour in the mid 80s that you don't have a copy of yet. So yeah, completist might mean different things to different people. Something else I'll mention before we get into some items here. Something I've noticed is that, at least in my case, the bands that I am kind of completist about are bands that are a little bit more on the extreme side of heavy metal rather than the more traditional stuff. Not sure why that is. Some of the bands I think just have smaller catalogs, so it's a little easier to pick up all their stuff. And some of them are just bands I like an awful lot. I am only sticking to bands, tonight that have a reasonably sized catalog. I mean, I could say that, oh, hey, I've got the entire discography by this random new wave of British heavy metal band because they only made 2 singles. So how hard is that to put together? Yeah, that's not the kind of catalog I'm talking about. I think the smallest one I'll talk about tonight is a band that has at least 5 studio albums. Well, one of them has a bunch of demos and odd stuff too. So once again, it gets kind of, hard to quantify. But yeah, for me, it's bands that, don't have the largest catalog out there and come from some of the different sort of more extreme ends of the heavy metal spectrum. All right, with all of that rambling out of the way, let's show some stuff. And again, going to go through these relatively quickly because there's a lot of things to show. I'm not going to dwell on them too long. The first band I realized that I am technically completist about is, well, Death. Chuck did 7 studio albums. a lot of people think they're all pretty fantastic. So it's not a hard catalog to put together. Most of them are pretty easy to pick up in one pressing or another. I don't have multiple pressings of these. I do have the first two on original vinyl pressings, but a lot of these CDs are just more recent pressings. Some of them are older pressings, like Human and Individual Thought Patterns. Some of them aren't. So I used to have a promo cardboard slipcase, a symbolic. Don't have that anymore. I've also got the Control Denied CD around here somewhere. It's in a different stack. But yeah, so Death, a very good band. Not one I go back to and play a ton these days, but I do like every album. And it's an interesting catalog because Chuck changed pretty rapidly over time. So every album gives you something a little bit different. Makes it an interesting one to always revisit. So that's the first band that I realized, like, yeah, at least in terms of studio albums, I am completist on. I've got the whole run of Death albums. Second band is Summoning. We've got everything, Lord Burrs, the debuts, the one that a lot of people can probably do without. I got it early on. Is it the best album? No, it's definitely probably at the bottom of the stack in terms of their catalog. But I've never quite been able to bring myself to let it go either. And excuse me. Of course, they quickly started evolving their own more unique style on albums like Minas Morgul. Always liked this one a lot. It's got kind of a relatively thin sound. They haven't built up that really layered structure yet. They advance on Dol Guldur. One that most people cite as their favorite is Stronghold. This is then really kind of now realizing what it is they've been aiming for up to this point. I've always really liked Let Mortal Heroes Sing Your Fame. This one has a little bit of an odder production. It's almost a little mechanical sounding in a way. The vocals are a bit different, but I think the songs are excellent. Even have one of the EPs. I believe this had like a couple of unreleased tracks on it. It's one of those things I got very cheap on eBay like 20 years ago. They have one other EP that came out around this time, and I don't have that one. But then you get to the more recent albums, even ones like Oathbound, I still find the band very interesting. This one, I always forget the title of this one. Reading their scripts is kind of a pain sometimes. And even the most recent with Doom We Come, some people weren't as big on this one, but I think especially the album starts really good. Tarkalion, Silvertine, Karkaroth, those are really good summoning songs. They were very much in the zone of this sort of world building, going very deep into the J.R.R. Tolkien source material for their lyrics and inspiration, and they do it really well. Other bands have tried to copy them. A couple do a decent job, but summoning's kind of their own thing. I've got all the albums plus an EP, and yeah, if they put out another one, I'll probably pick it up just about as soon as it comes out. All right, and excuse me, still having some throat problems at the time of this recording, so every now and then my voice just kind of squeaks out, trying to get that worked on. Band number 3, one that I love quite a bit, is California's Cirithungal, or as they pronounce it, Cirithungal. Won't go down that rabbit hole tonight. Cirithungal, their catalog is relatively easy to collect because they don't have a ton of studio albums since they were on hiatus for like 30 years. But there's still some cool things that I've picked up along the way. This is a CD pressing of what's come to be known as the Orange album. I've never been 100% clear if it was really meant to be an album. It always felt like it was just like a demo recording they did around 1978. Copies of it floated around for a while. The band officially sanctioned copies of it on cassette, and then it got a CD pressing as well. It's on a South American label. So chance to hear, very early Cirithungal stuff, which is, a bit primitive, a bit raw. It's start at Frost and Fire and kind of, and devolve it a little bit from there. But wanted to pick it up because Cirithungal is one of those bands where we start to become a sick little monkey about. You have Frost and Fire, of course. Still kind of a 1 foot in the 70s on that album, but it's got a cool vibe. I like it. King of the Dead is the classic most people cite as their favorite. This is where they've really got their big sort of, epic, doomed out power metal sound, or epic, powered out doom metal sound. Always a little hard to describe Kirithungle. Very unique, original band. One Foot in Hell. This album never gets as much praise as it should. Maybe because the cover artwork isn't quite as good as on some of the others. It's a very dark picture. Not quite maybe as epic as some of the others, but fantastic album. Very powerful. The last one they did for a long time, Paradise Lost. This is a reissue that came out like around the 2010s. The old original copies were always hard to get. The album got very little, distribution or push from the label. Band kind of folded. Half this album is incredibly good, though. There are a few clunkers on here, but yeah, 4 or 5 of the tracks on here are absolutely amazing, top notch Kirithungle stuff. And that was about it for a long time. This, got put out in the early 2000s, Servants of Chaos. It was a 2 CD set with a lot of demos and things, some really old material, some of the Paradise Lost demos. The liner notes in here are really interesting with Rob Garvin and maybe some others talking about, yeah, here's the demo we wanted. This is what we wanted Paradise Lost to sound like until, the stupid label guys screwed it all up. So excellent collection for diehard Kirithungle fans. And then, of course, the band has finally come out of retirement. You got this big I'm Alive CD and DVD set, kind of celebrating some of their return performances at some of the big festivals over in Europe. I'm usually not a huge collector of live material. In a lot of cases, the live sound quality just isn't that great. There's plenty of exceptions to that, but there's plenty of live recordings that still sound like they're recorded with somebody who has a Walkman in their back pocket, standing about 50 rows back in the middle of a big echoey auditorium. But yeah, I picked up the I'm Alive to hear and see what they were like. Video is another thing I don't really collect or watch hardly at all, but I did actually watch all the DVD stuff in that set. The band finally got a new studio album out, Forever Black, and that one's fantastic as well. They've done an EP since then, Half Past Human, and this seems to have a couple of older songs, but I think they've re-recorded them and stuff, but some good ones on there as well. So yeah, Kirithungle, pick up most of their stuff when I can. But wait, there's more. Like I said, this is where the monkey gets pretty sick. Kirithungle have also got a ton of their vinyl stuff. I don't often pick up CD and vinyl of items. I do sometimes, but it has to be something that I really like. And with Kirithungle, it just kind of happened gradually over time. This is the big fancy hardback edition Metal Blade recently did for Frost and Fire. It's got the original version and then also a sort of new mix version of it. It's got multiple CDs in it, lots of bio stuff. Metal Blade had it on sale a while back, so picked it up. Didn't necessarily need it because, well, let's see. Well, as you'll see, already had a couple other copies, but the Kirithungle ones were a little out of order. Also got Forever Black on vinyl. The local store had it. I'm a little bit of a sucker for colored vinyl. This came with the cool big poster that's on the wall back there. So I didn't pick it up right away, but eventually it's like, I have the rest of their albums on vinyl. I'm probably going to feel dumb if I don't have that one. It's one of those few bands where I can talk myself into that. Bootleg material. I want to say this one came out somewhere in the early or mid 2000s. 1983, live Arlington Theater in California. Yeah, bootlegs are another one. I don't pick up a ton of them, but if I stumble across them, they're by a band I really like, and the price is right, I will get them. But I don't really go out of my way looking for bootlegs most of the time. Here we've got Paradise Lost on vinyl. Now, this is a bootleg pressing. For a long time, this album was never available on vinyl. The label didn't put out vinyl copies back in the day, really. And the band could never get the rights to it to reissue it. So this was pressed up by someone in Greece, if I recall correctly. And it's actually really nicely done. The sound quality is good. They actually, put some art on it. The cover image is pretty clear. And again, I love this album. wanted it to go with the other Kirith Ungol albums. And so I eventually did manage to track down a copy of that. It's since been reissued. There's a legit pressing on vinyl. I haven't picked that up. I'm not quite that sick of a little monkey. But yeah, really nice boot press of it. You've got 1 Foot in Hell. I've had this forever. Does have a cut corner, but I can live with that from time to time. You've got the metal blade press on that. We of course have excuse me, sorry about the voice. Just kind of goes in and out a little bit these days. Got King of the Dead with this one was one of those metal blade Enigma pressings, classic cover art. Now you'll notice there's a cover of that framed back there as well, because, well, reasons. This one is, let's see, this is a copy of King of the Dead, but a different label pressing. This is a South American pressing, if I remember right. And the cover for it is actually a copy of the Frost and Fire artwork, which makes no sense. But for that particular pressing, they used the artwork from album number 1, but it includes album number 2. Weird stuff. It was an oddball item. I got from a collector, again, back in the early 2000s. Just like, that's really cool. Don't need it, but going to pick it up. The King of the Dead cover back there is just from another copy of King of the Dead. Pretty sure this is the same pressing as the one I showed a moment ago. No, actually, this is the Road Racer pressing. So there we go. Different pressings of that. Wanted one cover for the wall. One of them's in a little better condition than the other. But wait, there's more. There's, of course, an original Frost and Fire. There's a few different pressings of this. If you, again, want to go really deep down the rabbit hole, you have to look at variations on the label, and there's some slight differences on the back cover in terms of where things are present. For example, some pressings have the kneeling skeletons down here in the center blue parts. Mine doesn't. Looking at the Discogs versions really closely, mine is what's listed as like the second pressing out of the 3 original versions of Frost and Fire. I don't know if any of them are more rare than one. I don't know if one is more expensive or harder to get than the others. They're relatively minor variants. I don't have the other 2. I'm not saying I wouldn't get the other 2. I am that kind of sick little monkey, but they're not something I want to pay, huge prices, to get, very minor differences on the cover. And let's see, that does it for the Kirith Ungol collection. So let's set those aside and get into band number 4. One of my pet bands, excuse me, that I like to champion was Australia's Armored Angel. This band, of course, only had 1 album, but they did have a lot of demos and stuff back in the day. And this is one of the rare cases where I've tracked down the actual cassettes, not a cassette collector. Baptism in Blood. Now, this is their first demo, but this is the reissued version. I've never seen an original copy of the Baptism in Blood cassette. It was very early in their career. It sounds very different than everything else they did. It leans more towards like Iron Maiden kind of territory. But still, a cool artifact that begins their career. Then the other demos here are the original pressings. We had the Wings of Death demo. This is where they start to get, that more death thrash style. Same Communion. Sounds very similar to that. And then also the Stigmartyr cassette. Don't have this in a case because it's got a kind of a weird J card. You can't have the prongs that go through the center holes on the case because there's no opening for it in the J card. So, yep, we've got those on cassette. I don't even have a working cassette player at this point, so I have to have them on CD as well. This is the reissue. I think these were done. They were distributed through Shadow Kingdom back in the earlier 2000s. Original digipack of Stigmartyr, probably my favorite from them. The Mysterium EP. I don't have the original cassette of this one. I don't see very often, and at this point in time, these things are too expensive for me to collect. I got all those other Armored Angel tapes, 20, 25 years ago when you could get them for a reasonable price. Nowadays, everything's too expensive. Even I can only pay so much for this kind of stuff. My mania only goes so far, and my wallet's not that big. Angel of the Sixth Order, their one and only album, the original Warheads pressing. Then all the Armored Angel stuff has been reissued as well, so you can get a lot of it pretty easily. Angel of the Sixth Order had a different cover for the front when it got reissued. You can get all the demo stuff put onto a 2-disc collection called Hymns of Hate. This one, it's a nice collection. However, I'm thinking it does not have the original 85 demo, that first one with the red cover I showed. It may be left off. It's a little hard to cram all the Armored Angel stuff onto 2 CDs. And they sometimes don't have things like in chronological order when you look at these compilations. A long time ago, I put all the material on a 2 CD set myself, where it's all the material in chronological order, so you could listen from their earliest stuff to their latest. They also got reissues on vinyl when some of those were done. This is one of the last demos that they did before the kind of classic lineup broke up. A lot of these vinyl reissues are done on one-sided colored vinyl. Not going to pull them all out to show them off. Again, trying to go through things relatively quickly here. But Communion also got the same kind of treatment. Communion looks like that one's on blue vinyl. They did a nice job on these reissues. They look very nice, and kind of it's at least cool that they got some vinyl pressings. There's the Angel of the Sixth Order on vinyl. And they just keep coming. There's the Mysterium on vinyl. I think this one was on a weird gray color of vinyl. Not as attractive as maybe some of the others, but a great release, one of their best. Stigmartyr on vinyl. Now, the patch in here didn't come with that. The band, again, maybe around the early 2000s, had put a lot of different patches and other kind of memorabilia on eBay. And yes, I bought one of just about all of them. There may have been 1 or 2 patches I missed. Some of them I've just slid in here with the records. Some of them I've got in a shadow box picture frame up on the wall. So yeah, even collected the patches from Armored Angel. They made a couple of flags. I bought both of the flags. I actually use them as the dust covers for my turntable and my amp when I'm not using them. They've got some of the different designs on them. Wings of Death. I believe, was this one red vinyl, perhaps? But yep, another nice vinyl reissue there. With Armored Angel, I've got a couple of the old original shirts. This one's interesting. It's the only classic OG piece of vinyl the band had out. This was the Wings of Death demo. It was put out on that sort of Underground Records demo series. So yeah, this is the only vinyl artifact released when the band was actually active. In the back, there's a nice letter from Lucy. It actually had corresponded with him back in the time to learn more about the band, ordered some stuff directly from him, including one of those old shirts. Oh yeah, and last, the vinyl pressing of that Baptism in Blood as well. And again, random patch, because I have to put the patches somewhere. So yeah, Armored Angel, I've even got, a few different old fanzines that had short interviews or articles about Armored Angel. They never got a ton of press, but I found a couple of times where they did get interviewed, and I tracked down those fanzines as well. And why did I do this? Because I'm a sick little monkey. One last band to go then. And again, sorry if I'm going through these a bit fast, but I've shown a lot of this stuff in other videos. I have an Armored Angel video. I have a Kirathungal video where some of these things are shown and discussed in more detail. So you can check those out if you want more info. The video tonight was really just kind of, quickly going through and showing that, there are a few bands I'm completist about, and the monkey sickness kind of escalates. Last one to talk about is Atlantean Codex. newer band from Germany. So again, a little easier to be completist about them because they haven't been around as long. They have 3 studio albums at this point. Keep that in mind as I go through this because I have a few more things to show than just 3 items. This band, first album they put out themselves was the Narcotic. Let's see, yes, Narcotic Demos. This is one of those bands I fell in love with literally from like the first couple of notes I heard by them, which was this particular release. So, yep, got the original of that. When it was reissued, they had some bonus tracks, some demos, and live stuff. So, picked up the CD reissue of that as well. So, that's 2 copies of Narcotic Demos so far. It did get a vinyl pressing. Got to find the right stack here. So yeah, the vinyl pressing, it was like 2 10-inch, and 10 inches are always a little wonky to store, especially when they have like when there's 2 of them and it's like a thicker cover and stuff. But yeah, so the Narcotic vinyls on black vinyl. So copy 3. There were also a couple of limited versions of the Narcotic vinyls that came in like a thicker box instead of just the cover. And this is one of those. This particular version, there were 2 versions of the box set. They came with, slightly different little, pieces of paraphernalia. Not going through them in detail, but, there's a certificate of authenticity kind of thing. And they come on different colors of vinyl. I think it's kind of a yellow-green swirl. So mine is, and they have very fancy, Die Hard edition type names. I don't even remember the names for both of them. But yeah, I have one of the 2 box versions of this. The other one that I don't have included like a small bottle of bourbon or something. It's, I think, known as more as like the Boar's Head or Boar's Cult edition. Never could track down a copy of that one. Both the boxes were pretty limited. I'm glad I was able to at least get one of the 2. I always figured the other one could also be a bit of a pain to try to buy because having it shipped to you, especially if you have to have it shipped from overseas and it includes a small bottle of alcohol, that might be a problem somewhere along the way. So that puts us up to 4 copies of the Narcotic demos. Then here's another copy. Why do I have this copy? This is one of the white label test pressings that I bought from the label owner when they put some stuff up for sale a long time ago. Let me go deal with one quick thing here in the background. So yeah, this was obviously one of those things. It's only going to show up once or twice in a lifetime. What can you do? Be right back. All right, sorry for the pause. Just had to take care of a pet. So we're up to 5 copies of the Narcotic vinyls. Not quite done yet. It got reissued years later with different cover art. So picked that up. Comes with a poster, a booklet, all of that stuff. So that's 6 copies. Surely that's enough, right? Well, they also did the reissue on colored vinyl. And so here's the same thing. The colored vinyl on this one is weird. It's kind of a dark greenish color. It's really pretty, but it is very hard to see. When I first got these and pulled them out, I thought they had accidentally sent me 2 black vinyl copies. To see the green, you really have to hold this up to a pretty strong light. And then you can notice like, oh yeah, that's actually a nice shade of green. But as soon as you take it away from the light, it looks very much like a black vinyl copy. So kind of a shame that they chose that particular color. It didn't quite turn out noticeable enough, in my opinion. Okay, we're finally done with the Narcotic demos. 7 copies. I would buy the 8th if I ever had a chance to get that Boar's Cult box edition for a reasonable price. What else has Atlantean Codex done? Well, one of their early appearances was on I would call it a compilation. Some people might call it a split. A few different bands on here. They only have, let's see, one one track with an early version of their eponymous song. Really good take on it. There is a second version of this, kind of a Die Hard edition. It comes with a patch. There's a couple other little differences. Never been able to track that one down. I see it from time to time, but people want to charge a really big price for it at this point. And this does feature some other bands that have gotten attention to over time. The Swedish side has Enforcer, Portal, and Ram on it. So this is kind of desired by collectors of multiple different bands. Kind of a cool compilation. The band also did a sort of self-done self-made live album pretty early on. All of their live stuff is always referred to as the annihilation of fill in the blank of the city where we played live, which kind of a cool gimmick, because yes, the idea is we've annihilated the place. The show, literally blew everyone off the stage. And it also kind of lets you, know right away, yep, it's another live album, but it's from a different location, different city and such. But yeah, this was an early one they did themselves, just simple white label version. They only made 89 copies of this when it came out. I think I was literally something like person 91 who tried to order a copy, and they were like, we just sold out, sorry. So I had to track that one down on the secondary market later on. My copy, I think, is number 79 out of 89, 73, kind of a high number, doesn't matter. It's signed and autographed, personalized to the original buyer on the back. Not going to show that so that they're not shamed into seeing that they sold their copy and I ended up with it. I see a copy show up for sale maybe every few years on eBay. People try to charge hundreds and hundreds of dollars for it now. I don't think those copies necessarily sell. I have seen a couple of copies sell up in that price range though. So that's the early Atlantean Codex stuff. I haven't even got to the 3 albums yet. And the first album was The Golden Bough. Excellent, amazing album. Love it to death. So I had the CD. Then we've also got this vinyl pressing, which comes with like sort of a large, what is this, A5, A10? I get those different size measurements mixed up because we don't use them in the US a lot. But yeah, it comes with the large book. But then there's also a slightly different, vinyl pressing. Both of these have the, the Iron Codex and Cruz del Sur numbers on them. But yeah, this one, comes with more like a normal size lyric insert instead of the book. Apparently that was an important enough difference that I decided to buy both of them. I think what happened is I got this one first when it came out. Later on, I learned that there was the kind of fancier version with the book, and I found it for still just normal retail price. I was like, yeah, I'll take that version too. Next up was the White Goddess, their second album. Also fantastic. The sound's becoming a little cleaner, shaped up, a little not, kind of, cleaning off the slightly rougher edges at this point. Vinyl pressings of this. This is a white vinyl copy. All of my copies are the ones that have 20 bucks spin on the back cover, which is who distributed it in the US. Thank goodness. Also, it came on black vinyl. So this copy is on a black vinyl, same as the white vinyl copy otherwise. And then I have another black vinyl copy of this. But this one is autographed. Jurgen from, of course, we all know who Jurgen is over at, 6 Beers and 9 Wives channel. Sent this to me as some VCLT a while back. And one of the nicest things I've ever received in the mail from anybody. So Jurgen, if you're watching, thank you very much. That one I've got 2. So 4 copies of White Goddess. I think that's enough. I think my White Goddess collection's kind of done. Then, of course, you have their most recent Course of Empire album. Not as many versions of this one to show. This is kind of tame compared to everything else. I have the CD and I've got one vinyl copy. It has, again, very nicely done booklet and everything like that. They put a lot of attention to detail into the stuff for Atlantean Codex releases. There are some other pressings of that. And there's some singles and stuff that came out around that time. I don't have any of those. A lot of those are things that you basically, this version was on sale when were on tour in Europe in the summer of 2019. So there were relatively few copies of it made. None of them ever got circulated in the US. So to get one, they're kind of pricey and have to be ordered from overseas. So the shipping drives the price even further up. Yeah, there's a single or two, kind of the same situation. I'm not saying I won't try to get those one day, but they're just too expensive to purchase and pay the import shipping for at this point in time. So maybe if I find a good deal on them at some point, if someone in the US has a copy for sale where the shipping doesn't, almost double the price, might add those to the collection. But for now, going to have to leave those slots empty. And last, they did a multi-disc set, The Annihilation of Bavaria, in this case, which again, more live material. And it sounds good. You don't quite, get all the big feel and magic, from you will with a studio recording, of course, but I picked that one up too. Okay. I think we're done. As far as other stuff for Atlantean Codex, I have one t-shirt from Atlantean Codex. They've had a bunch of shirts and flags and stuff, but again, hard to get in the US unless you pay import shipping prices, and that just drives the costs up so much. I don't have a ton of space left for hanging banners or things like that, so I haven't picked up any of that stuff to date. But there you have it, 5 bands that I do tend to be completist about, from relatively simple, Death, the 7 studio albums, to Atlantean Codex, where I think I had 7 copies of the one original EP. Because, hey, everybody's got, some of those bands, that they just really love, and, they will vacuum up everything that they come across that's within their price range. So that's going to do it for this video. Time for me to wrap this up, and let's talk metal in the comments down below. What are your completist bands? The ones that you really do try to make an effort to get everything you can from by the groups, whether it's a large band and you have a ton of their stuff, or maybe, it's a smaller band that's only got, the first few albums and associated things, but you've been snapping up everything you could because you love that band so much. Leave a comment down below and let folks know what bands you're really into being completist about. With that, time to sign off. Everybody take care, and as always, keep banging your head.